Second half of October 1942. The world is burning. Inside it, humanity has become a boiling, molten mass in a crucible. Add too much heat, and it will boil over. This is War Against Humanity, a series of World War II in real time. I'm Spartacus Olsson. In the first half of October in the Pacific, the Japanese hell ships transporting POW became the accidental victims of Allied attacks, killing thousands of mainly British and Australian POW. The Holocaust reached a death toll of 2.5 million Jewish men, women, children, and infants, while the British Commonwealth and Germany got into a diplomatic spat about shackling POW in the aftermath of the August British-Canadian commando raid on Dieppe. Resistance and collaboration inside occupied Europe continued to escalate, resulting in thousands of deaths. The rest of October sees more of the same. In France, there are more than 15 bomb attacks and numerous assassinations against Germans and French collaborators by the resistance. Crops and grain storehouses bound for Germany are being burned by the dozens weekly. The most public attack is a bomb detonated in a German cargo train at the Lyon main train station, killing several German and French train workers and destroying the train. The increase in activity is strongly tied to the directive to export forced laborers to France from September. Strikes have erupted in several cities like Lyon, Chambéry, Grenoble, and Saint-Étienne, with reports of over 10,000 workers laying down their work. In Annecy, women take to the streets, parading with placards reading, "We won't let our husbands go to Germany." When lists of forced workers are published in Lyon and en Berrieux on October 15th, riots break out. Vichy police, supported by the Gestapo, killed dozens and wound hundreds by using grenades against the crowds. To suppress the resistance, 100 plainclothes Gestapo agents arrive on the outskirts of Lyon in the third week of October to coordinate with French police. In city after city, the French National Guard takes control, patrolling the streets in armored cars and assisting the Gestapo to flush out the organizers of protests. In Belgium, the reaction to the German slave labor laws are similar, although less virulent. To quench any uprisings beforehand, the Nazi occupiers published the names of 122 resistance fighters captured and murdered so far this year, while indicating that the total number is significantly higher. In the Netherlands, although 300,000 workers are already in Germany and more are being rounded up, the Germans are disappointed by the lack of collaboration and vow reprisals, even saying that if the Dutch do not join their Germanic neighbors by supporting the war, a large portion, millions of Dutch, will face forced resettlement in Eastern Europe. The occupiers step up reprisals. In October alone, the Germans report having summarily executed 100 civilians, imprisoned 2,000 former military personnel, and taken 500 civilians hostage. In her hiding in an attic in Amsterdam, 13-year-old Anne Frank writes, "Have you ever heard the term hostages? That's the latest punishment for saboteurs. It's the most horrible thing you can imagine. Leading citizens, innocent people, are taken prisoner to await their execution. If the Gestapo can't find the saboteur, they simply grab 5 hostages and line them up against the wall. You read the announcements of their death in the paper where they are referred to as fatal accidents. Fine specimens of humanity, those Germans, and to think I'm actually one of them." Other German Jewish victims of the fight on the resistance are reaped in the east. In the Riga ghetto, several thousand German and a few hundred Latvian Jews have been left alive in the ghetto complexes to work as slaves. Some have escaped and joined the partisans, even organizing resistance cells inside the ghetto itself. When a partisan cell related to the ghetto is unraveled, the Nazis seize 100 Jews and murder them, including most of the Jewish ghetto police on October 31st. But you don't have to be Jewish to face Nazi wrath, even when you're German. Inside the Reich itself, 5 people are executed this month for having distributed anti-Nazi propaganda. In Poland, the resistance also continues to strike at the occupiers, carrying out assassinations and bomb attacks. On Crete, English, New Zealand, Australian, and Greek guerrillas are now waging a continuous war against the Germans with air support by the RAF. In the Pacific region, the situation is far more one-sided. In Rabaul, Papua New Guinea, refugees report that the native population has been rounded up in barbed wire enclosures and are being held as slaves for the Japanese. Conditions are dire, with a lack of food and rampant disease. They also tell of summary executions and maiming by cutting off hands for minor infractions. For the distraction of the soldiers, a comfort station with 300 imported sex slaves has been set up. From occupied Indonesia, reports are emerging that food is getting scarce. Both incarcerated and free Europeans and Indonesians alike are suffering from malnutrition and oppression by the occupiers. Across the Japanese-occupied territories, even from allied Thailand, reports of growing dissatisfaction because of plunder of natural resources and foodstuffs are emerging. But the specter of hunger, even starvation, is widespread. On the Eastern Front, starvation for the surviving population under German looting has become the new normal. In China, the autumn harvest has been disappointing, and now both the Chinese forces and the Japanese occupiers are taking more food from the farmers than is sustainable. In Henan province, that is on the front lines, a hunger crisis is already looming. In British India, especially in Bengal, food stores are also running out faster than they can be replenished. Even across Europe, including Great Britain and Germany, there is concern that there will not be enough food in the coming winter. While the cycle of resistance and reprisals turn its wheels and the grindstone of a world at war mill away at humanity, the diplomatic spat about shackling POW now escalates into murder and definite war crimes. As you will have seen in these episodes of the past weeks, on October 18, 1942, Hitler issues the Commando Order, stating that from now on all enemy soldiers operating against German troops in so-called commando raids in Europe or in Africa are to be killed down to the last man, regardless of whether they are soldiers in uniform, saboteurs with or without arms. Even if these individuals on discovery make obvious their intention of giving themselves up as prisoners, no pardon is on any account to be given. The order is secret out of fear for Allied reprisals, but the Nazis are fooling themselves if they imagine that their enemies are not aware of the war crimes and atrocities they are committing. Rather ironically, it is the Allies' fear of German further escalation that is holding back a more decisive and clear public response by, for instance, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. But that is about to change. Until now, it has been the governments in exile that have most actively investigated Nazi German atrocities, most notably Poland and Czechoslovakia. It was the Polish government that revealed the irrefutable evidence of the mass genocides of the Jews in June, and the Czechoslovak government, shocked after the Lidice massacre following the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, have begun compiling a most wanted list since this past summer. At the top of the list is, of course, Adolf Hitler, but he is joined by an ever-growing gallery of bandits that goes down to individual Wehrmacht personnel reported by the resistance. This has put the hosts of these governments, the British government, in a bit of a pickle. They were not consulted on any initiatives, and they already have German POW who are on these lists, so they risk looking like they're letting the Nazis off easy. This is not just theory. The Soviet official state newspaper Pravda has already publicly accused the British of harboring a criminal without putting him on trial. They are, of course, talking about Rudolf Hess, Hitler's confidant who flew to Scotland back in May 1941. His state and the diplomatic exchange is discussed openly in Western Allied country newspapers, and criticism grows. But the Western Allies had been pursuing a different strategy, which Minister of Aircraft Production Sir Stafford Cripps explains like this. The whole basis of any eventual punishment is on the basis of defeat and surrender, and during the continuance of hostilities, while hundreds of thousands of our people remain in power of the enemy, our decisions would inevitably be affected by the danger to our own people. Now, already this past summer, Churchill proposed to U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt to create a joint United Nations commission to investigate atrocities. These discussions have been continued, and on October 7th, the foundation of the United Nations War Crimes Commission is officially proposed in the House of Lords. In the following weeks, representatives of the U.S., Great Britain, Free France, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Yugoslavia, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Belgium, Greece, British India, China, and the USSR enter into final negotiations in London. Ultimately, the USSR bow out after their demand to have 7 votes, 1 for each Soviet republic, is not met. They were offered 3 votes for the most populous republics. For now, this is mostly political bluster and talk, but it is part of a growing united front by the Allies to increase not just their military response, but overall resistance against the Axis powers. For the Greek, October 28, 1942 is the third Oxy Day, commemorating the anniversary of Greek Prime Minister Yanis Metaxas' rejection of Benito Mussolini's ultimatum to cede territories to Italy or face invasion. A popular narrative of the story suggests that Metaxas merely replied Oxy, Greek for no. In fact, he replied in French, but equally curt, alors c'est la guerre. So it is war. This year, Churchill commemorates the event with a speech. Another year has passed during which the invaders of your land have tried by brute force and starvation to subdue the fires of Greek independence. They have failed, and your courage and spirit in adversity remain a lively inspiration to the United Nations. Outside their own country, the armed forces of Greece, the Navy, Army, and Air Force are once again in the field, already testing their growing strength in the face of the enemy and anxious for the day not far off when they will be with you and avenging your sufferings. Not just words, as on the same day, 12 aircraft of the 355th Squadron of the Hellenic Air Force, led by Captain Ioannis Kellas, successfully raid the Italian 10th Corps headquarters at Al Alamein. This is not the only air raid this month. With growing air domination of the Mediterranean, the Allies now focus on Italy. On October 23rd to 24th, Genoa is bombed by 112 Avro Lancasters. Hundreds of Italian civilians are killed, many of whom were trying in vain to reach an overcrowded air raid shelter. Milan is bombed on the 26th, with the Italians reporting significant numbers of dead civilians and destruction of 5 schools, 1 university, 2 hospitals, and several churches. On October 14th, the RAF again raids Kiel, setting the city ablaze and killing around 100. The next day, they attack the Rhineland and Cologne for the 110th time so far. The German Luftwaffe does not have planes to spare for large bombings and reprisals. Since August, they are focusing almost only on the areas of South Britain. It's mostly surgical terror attacks, like when 4 Focke-Wulf 190 heavy fighters strafe a southeastern countryside school, injuring 4 children seriously on October 15th. On the 31st, 30 fighter bombers and 60 fighters target Canterbury. Most of the planes are intercepted and turned back, but enough get through to cause significant damage to the city and kill 30 civilians. Death tolls that are unlawful, sad, and unnecessary, but pale in the shadow of the massive death toll of the Jews. On November 4th, it will be 100 days since the Großaktion Warschau set off the accelerated murder efforts of Operation Reinhard. The goal to kill 3 million Jews in the Generalgouvernement in Poland is still not completed, but the Germans are running out of large clusters of Jews to transport effectively, and their need for slave labor is growing. So for now, the killing at Bewszech, Sobibor, Treblinka, Majdanek, Auschwitz, and in the killing pits further east slow down somewhat. For far too many, that is too late. In the extermination factories, around 265,000 Jewish men, women, children, and infants from the Warsaw Ghetto have now been murdered. Another 103,020 from around the Warsaw District, 364,400 from the Radom districts, 13,000 from Przemyśl, 21,000 from Krakow, over 10,000 from Tarnow, 22,000 from Rzeszów, 12,000 from Debice, 10,000 from Yaroslavl, 16,000 from Jaslo, the same from Novi Sad, and 35,000 from the Lublin district. Over 90,000 from across Europe have been gassed in Auschwitz-Birkenau. Then there are the victims of the Holocaust of bullets that continues in Ukraine, the south of Russia, and in Bialystok. In December, Heinrich Himmler will report the death tally of the summer and fall to Hitler. In August, 31,246 people are shot. In September, 165,282. In October, 95,735. In November, 70,948 more. Over 360,000 people shot in 4 months. That is 1,470,000 human beings, 455,000 per month, or 14,000 per day, systematically killed. Add to that all the non-systematic murders from all over Europe in the streets, prisons, and concentration camps on a daily basis. By the end of this month, close to 3 million Jews have been murdered in only 16 months. Many more are still in the hands of their Nazi torturers. To understand what that means, we turn to Dov Freiberg, a 15-year-old Jewish prisoner in Sobibor's work crew. I shall tell the story of one day, an ordinary day, much like any other. That day I worked at cleaning a shed full of belongings and transferring them to the sorting shed. An umbrella had gotten stuck in a roof beam, and the SS man Paul Groth ordered a boy to get it down. The boy climbed up, fell from the roof, and was injured. Groth punished him with 25 lashes. Groth was pleased with what had happened and called over another German and told him he had found parachutists among the Jews. We were ordered to climb up to the roof, one after another. The agile, and I was one of them, succeeded in climbing out without falling. But the majority did not succeed. They fell down, broke legs, were whipped, bitten by Groth's dog Barry, and shot. The game was not enough for Groth. There were many mice around, and each of us was ordered to catch 2 mice. He selected 5 prisoners, ordered them to pull down their trousers, and we dropped the mice inside. The people were ordered to remain at attention, but they could not without moving. They were whipped. But this was not enough for Groth. He called over a Jew, forced him to drink alcohol until he fell dead. When the work was finished, we were ordered to lay the man on a board, pick him up, and slowly march while singing a funeral march. This is the description of one ordinary day, and many of them were even worse. Dov Freiberg is alive, and despite men like Paul Groth, he is not broken. He will fight back, and so will humanity. Never forget.